Good morning and welcome to the Policy Committee of the Hillsborough MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, and welcome. And we will open to this morning's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I kind of like that pledge with the multiple cascading pledges. Good morning to everyone. We'll have, I think, a roll call at this point.
Cohen,
Here.
Wagner,
Here.
Klug,
Here.
Kemp,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Maniscalco,
Here.
Oberman.
Here.
And are there any other MPO board members present?
Jessica Vaughn.
Joseph Citro.
And we do have an in-person quorum.
Great, thank you. And with that, if we can go to approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Maniscalco.
Second, Citro.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Citro. With that, I guess we have a roll call on that.
Right, you don't need to have a roll call.
Oh, okay. So, I guess all those.
I think we said that because.
Anybody because of this?
Because of, we decided in the last meeting that because of the virtual hybrid thing, we were going to do roll call votes. If people, yeah, I don't know if we need it for the minutes, but on anything substantive.
Cohen,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
Klug,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Oberman.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. And with that.
Are you not, excuse me, are you not roll calling the other board members, Citro and Vaughn?
I'm sorry?
Are the other board members not being included in the roll call, Citro and Vaughn?
That's correct, because you're not voting members of the policy committee.
Okay.
If you would like to become a voting member of the policy committee, the board can make that recommendation. We'd love to have you, and of course, you're very welcome to join in the discussion here this morning, and we're glad you came here for the discussion about schools.
Okay, thanks so much, I appreciate it.
And we'll move now to public comment. I understand we have one public commenter this morning, and I do not know who that is, but if they could, if they're there virtually and identify themselves, you have 3 minutes.
That would be Josephine Amato.
Hi, good morning. My name is Josephine Amato. Can you everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I'm the founder of Safe Bus for Us, and I've been advocating for children's safe paths to school in Hillsborough County for the last 6 years. Shanika Davis, 15-year-old killed by a motor vehicle walking to school. Norman Velasquez Cabrera, 15-year-old killed by a motor vehicle walking to school. Alexis Miranda, killed by a motor vehicle walking to school. Amanda Suarez, killed by a motor vehicle walking to school. Elijah Cruz, killed by a motor vehicle walking to school. Damias Muniz, 10 years old, killed walking to school. 7-year-old Elijah Cruz was hit by a motor vehicle in Plant City. All of these beautiful children were injured or killed simply trying to walk to school. Crosswalks without enforcement are mere suggestions to our drivers. Sidewalks are great, but without buffers leaves our children vulnerable to being hit by vehicles weighing 5,000 pounds or more, made of metal, moving with force and speed. As our county faces population increase with heavy traffic, F-rated roads, and chaos and dangerous scenes surround our schools. Every week, we lose 1.8 pedestrians and 649 are injured in the state of Florida. The numbers have only increased since I began my advocacy 6 years ago. The American school bus is not a courtesy or privilege. It is immediate life-saving intervention to save over 14,000 children's lives. It is a public transportation for students attending public schools that is fully funded by public dollars, and life-saving intervention that should be provided equally to each and every one of our students. The Hispanic American population in Hillsborough is 28%. The Hispanic population in Hillsborough County Schools is 38%. Yet our children make up 90% of the children killed on their path to school because they do not have equal access to the school bus. The school bus stopped in front of my home, and my daughter is disabled, and we were denied a school bus. And that is because Hispanic Americans are denied equal access to a public education resource in disproportionate numbers. If we need to really address our Vision Zero to address equity and the vision of zero, the data does not lie. Our children are not numbers, but they are our loved ones. A child is 7,000% less likely to be killed on a school bus than in your vehicle. In your vehicle, in a car seat, they are 70% less likely to be killed. Let me tell you what the denial of a school bus cost us. The second highest pedestrian death rate in the nation, the third highest car insurance rates in the nation, third in human trafficking in the nation. Tampa Bay lost $1.5 billion due to congestion. Annual cost of crashes are $242 billion. Total additional cars on our road are 130,000 from public schools, 60,000 from private and charters. Congestion cost drivers $1,216 last year. The cost of a school bus for one child for 1 year is $742. We have over 25 elementary schools with 200 or more registered sex offenders surrounding the 2-mile walking radius of those schools. All of those elementary schools are Title I schools that do not have equal access to the school bus, even though they are legally entitled to it. 100% of our Title I schools lost safe school bus transportation within 2 miles. 46% of the schools that lost safe school bus transportation are Title I schools. 100% of our schools with a majority student population who are Black and brown students lost safe school bus transportation to school within 2 miles. I'm addressing the MPO because we can no longer talk about Vision Zero without being inclusive of the school bus as the #1 safest path to school. We can no longer talk about safe streets without being inclusive of the violence which exists on many of those streets and increased dangers facing our children on their path to school. There's a huge difference between a child not having access to a school bus and a parent making a choice to self-transport. There's a huge difference in equal access to a public resource. When you deny my child access to a school bus, it stops in front of my house. You are not telling my child to get on the back of the bus. You created a disproportionate system to deny my child because of the color of their skin equal access to their public education and a public education transportation resource. And I want to address this because we need to really truly address our Vision Zero and Safe Streets policy so that we are inclusive and we address the equity and disparity of equal access to our public resource of transportation. It's the largest public transportation resource in our county. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we'll move now to our action items. The first action is election of committee officers, and I'll turn that over to Cameron Clark. I guess you're here virtually with us.
Mr. Clark, can you hear us?
You're muted, I believe, or maybe is he on the phone? I can.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So I'm going to do the election of officers for Policy Committee. I'll start with the chair of Policy Committee. I'll ask for nominations. Keep asking until no more are received, and I'll ask for a vote on each nomination. Following that, we'll do the election of vice chair. Can I receive a nomination for chair of MPO Policy Committee?
We nominate Commissioner Kemp.
Yeah. Second.
Commissioner Kemp. Commissioner Kemp is nominated. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, Commissioner Kemp is elected chair of MPO Policy Committee. And next, I ask for nominations for Policy Committee Vice Chair.
Is Guido Maniscalco the vice chair? Okay, I'd like to nominate him.
Second.
Councilman Maniscalco is nominated for vice chair. It's okay. It's okay. It doesn't require a second. Councilman Maniscalco is nominated for vice chair. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, Councilman Maniscalco is elected as Policy Committee Vice Chair. And that's all I have, Mr. Kemp.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move on now to our discussion items. The first one, and maybe the only, I guess, the school siting in South Hillsborough County with Amber Dickerson from the
Good
school.
morning.
Okay, all right. Well, good morning. Thank you so much for having me this morning. My name is Amber Dickerson. I'm the General Manager of Growth Management for Hillsborough County Public Schools. Today, we wanted to present to you some of our transportation siting issues due to the interest within this committee. So we will go ahead and launch into the second slide, please. Okay, so the objective today is really to talk about the relationship between school siting and infrastructure issues. Also, that relates to the critical needs for school sites and consists, oops, I think I froze for a minute. Okay, so we'll evaluate the critical need for school sites, assess consequences of not having school sites, and discuss next steps. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so this is our current 5-year work plan. So we have been building schools. We opened a new beautiful Sumner High School off of Balm Road, east of 301 in South County. Also on the west side of 301, right in the same area, we constructed Belmont Elementary School. We also rebuilt Tampa Heights Elementary, that's in the city. Spoto High School addition, we're constructing right now to add capacity to that high school. Additionally, we're doing an addition at Waimama Elementary School to add elementary seats to the South County area. Both of those are under construction currently. We just started moving dirt on our new PK8 located in Waterset to open August 2022. We have 2 projects. One's at Collins PK8. That may be an addition. We're working with the county to potentially co-locate a facility, which is like a really cool idea of having a park north of Collins with a middle school addition to the existing elementary school. So that's a really neat project to follow. Also, Manhattan PK8 in South Tampa. And then we had a partially funded high school in our 5-year work plan slated for Bishop Road, which since, and I'll get into more later, has had a finding of inconsistency for the school siting. And that's really why we initially had a full middle school that would have been in our 3rd year of this plan located on Bishop Road. But since the county staff found it inconsistent due to transportation infrastructure, we had to quickly shift gears and try to come up with projects that we could have some middle school capacity, which we're in desperate need of in South County. So next slide, please. So here are our revenues. So just for the edification of this group, we only spend school impact fees on capacity projects, and those are our only capacity funds that we get. So we used to get funds from the state for construction projects. That is no longer happening. But luckily, thanks to a lot of members of this group, we were able to get a school impact fee increase last year, which is significantly helping our building program. Additionally, thanks to, I'm sure many of you in this room as well, we got a sales tax referendum to help with our deferred maintenance, which took a lot of pressure off of the budget. Obviously, we constantly have budget issues like any large governmental entity, but that being said, I think, okay, we can move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is really the meat of this discussion. This slide represents all of the possible school sites in this very high growth area, which I refer to as South County, which many of you do too. So highlighted in blue are the sites that are reserved within planned developments. In orange is our Bishop Road site, which we own. And in gray is a site that we have under contract consisting of 100 acres. The county staff in our last 5-year work plan encouraged us to locate within the projects in blue, within the existing planned developments. But there are some challenges with locating in planned developments. So first of all, and this is just to help kind of clarify the issue. First of all, we don't own any of the properties that are reserved for us in the PD. So we actually have to go to the developer, negotiate a purchase price, negotiate the exact location. Because on the PD, they show it basically reserved on a bubble plan. Also timing. All of these sites are located on substandard roadways, or the school site is in the center of an undeveloped project. So the county has stated that they can coordinate with the developers to help with the required infrastructure to lead to this site, but we need sites now. So also the acreage, none of the sites are large enough to accommodate a high school, which requires around 50 acres for a traditional high school. We have a new high school in the 5th year, which I mentioned, but it's surrounded by substandard roadways. So desirability too, often these sites are not the best quality sites, and not always in the best locations to serve students. And excuse me, the best PD options. So we've gone to the county and started conversations for some of the ones on this list for a pre-submittal. So we have to go through this internal citing process. We have submitted for Berry Bay. We've gone through the citing process for Bishop, which was not in our favor. It was found inconsistent, so we cannot build on that property as of now. We've also applied for the Dean Road and the Collins site as well. Oh, next slide, please. I'm sorry. I'm trying to change it myself. So this is a little timeline of kind of where we've been from last year to this year. I know I had a conversation back in September with the BOCC members, which are many of are on this line. So in January, we filed for a request of consistency to the county for our Bishop Road site located in South County. The inconsistency finding was issued on May 28th. So there was approximately a 4 to 5 month window where we were trying to work out the transportation methodology. So we're required by the interlocal to do a traffic study, a professionally accepted methodology with a traffic study. That is all that it's defined. So basically we had to work with the county staff to work out what points were we going to look at during this methodology. So that took a really long time. And then in September, we discussed with the BOCC that we're basically in a school siting crisis, and a lot of these slides were shared at that time. And then January 4th, like I said, we submitted for Berry Bay, our 100-acre site in Collins. And then after we, during those discussions, a new transportation methodology was devised by county staff, which was way more robust than the other transportation methodology. Just to give you an idea, the original one for the Bishop Road cost the school district $10,000. This new methodology would cost at least double, maybe triple, because of the in-depth data analysis they're requesting. So we're still trying to work out that issue. We've, gone back and forth kind of asking questions about where some of the data points can be found. So, and then transportation methodology has changed again. So it's kind of a moving target, which is a bit frustrating. We understand that the county wants to ensure that students and buses and cars are all very safe going in and out of school sites, but at the same time, we are in desperate need to build schools. So next slide, please. So how did we get here? Which is a great question. The district didn't have enough money through impact fees to build schools or buy property for a very long time. So well over a decade, school impact fees were not increased. So we definitely were very behind the ball because we did not have the resources to buy new sites. And then it's really no secret that the transportation infrastructure problem in South County, which is now negatively impacting school infrastructure to serve students that are moving into the area. Because there is not transportation infrastructure, that's kind of prohibiting school infrastructure now. So we're really stuck between a rock and a hard place because, and many of you may not know this, we are legally prohibited from using school funds to build non-adjacent roadways. Yet the schools need to serve those new students that are moving into those areas from the residential development that's already been approved. We're not talking about new developments. We're talking about everything that's already been approved and being built right now. And really, we have yet to find any properties that are located in the areas that we need them that are not located on substandard roads. Next slide, please. So what are the consequences? So some folks may think, well, if you can't build schools, you can squeeze them on the sites that you have currently. And really, that's not the case. Shields Middle School, if we do not build additional middle school seats, could be at or close to 160% utilization. So we have no sites to spend the increased impact fee funds to build schools. The development community is already feeling this, which I kind of flagged in the September presentation, that the school district in certain areas cannot do proportionate share mitigation agreements with developers because we don't have a high school project to pay towards. So since we do not have a high school project to pay towards, development in certain areas in South County is at a standstill right now. Overcrowding at the schools has many negative impacts to students, staff, and the community, and creates really politically tough issues. We may have to do double sessions, which means different grades would have different bell times. And really and truly, that will be a nightmare for everyone involved. So we must, can we go ahead and switch the slide? Sorry about that. Okay, so we must build new schools. Per the long-range plan, we'll need on average at least 2 schools per year to keep pace with growth, and we are not opening any new schools this year. So that's an issue. And then by this time next year, we may have to squeeze close to 3,000 new students into existing campuses that are already overcrowded. And since then, with the COVID crisis, that just makes the situation worse. So next slide, please. So this is actually a graphic of our Bishop Road site indicated in blue. And around it, as you can see, is residential development. The red represents already approved and under construction development. So these developments are located on the same roads that we're attempting to provide school space at. So next slide, please. Great. So this is just my opinion, but I really do believe we need both a short-term and long-term solution to basically this gridlock on school siting. So I feel that the school district should be exempt or waived from non-contiguous transportation improvements because we are, again, legally prohibited from paying to construct those facilities. Our mission is to build schools and school capacity. We are not necessarily, or should be, in the road business. But I do totally understand the county does not have the funds to make these improvements either. So that is why we received the finding of no consistency, because we identified in our transportation study millions of dollars of improvements that are needed in that area that we can't pay for and the county can't pay for either. So the schools are already over capacity in this area and they'll continue to grow. And then I think also the other piece is the long-term piece, because we know we don't want to cause any more traffic issues than are already in this area. But we know that a long-term solution isn't going to happen overnight. And that's why back in September, I mentioned or suggested that maybe it would be good to have a school siting task force to address some of these issues and potentially open up the interlocal so that agreement can work better for both the school district and the county. Since that meeting, the school district did nominate their member, which was member Dr. Hahn. But as far as Hillsborough County Board of County Commissioners, I am unsure if a member is going to be appointed to this or if we're making any movement on that. So next slide, please. So that is all I have for you today. So I'm sure you all have many questions, but thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We do have two more presentations from county staff and the MPO, but I think before we go, my instinct here is just to see specifically if anyone would like to specifically address that at this time, or if we should just wait. I don't think I see, and I can't see everybody, but yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Smith,
Go ahead.
Am I
You're
recognized?
You're recognized.
Sorry. All right, thank you. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm not sure why this presentation was brought to this group. I don't know if anybody has an answer to that, but the MPO has no role in any of this discussion and is not, given our makeup, including members from the Aviation Authority, the Port Authority, the THEA, all these other entities, they are not, it would be inappropriate for the policy committee or the MPO as a whole to take any action or make any recommendation to the parties to this discussion, the county commission and the school district elected officials who are sorting this out. We are, I have asked, and our board has directed us to work with the school district, first of all, to have a workshop. We did have a workshop a couple of years ago, and anyone who was there will laugh when you mention that workshop, because we did not get, and I see Amber laughing or smiling, we did not get to any substantive discussion. We were just shown a presentation of some vendor for something. What we really need to do is have a substantive discussion between the county commission and the school district about these issues, and looking at what to do in the short term, as well as how to significantly change our process so that the school district can be a full partner upstream in the planning process as we are trying to cite development, schools, transportation, so that it doesn't erupt in a crisis moving forward. So just to advise everyone, we are working on a workshop, and I think that workshop needs to happen before we consider whether to have a task force and who should be on that task force. I think we need to work together, board to board, elected officials with elected officials and our planners, about really sorting out what the goals of that task force would be, what their action items would be, and what their timeline would be before we task them. I have a lot of questions, and I've talked to Ms. Dickerson several times over the last couple of years. I've talked to school board members. I've talked to Mr. Davison, Addison Davison. He got here about this issue. I have a lot to say. I'm not going to say today because, as I say today, that this is not the body that can really make any decisions or recommendations. But I would just like to go to the two slides. One, your slide number 5, the potential school sites that show what's kind of in your pipeline.
There we go. Thank you, whoever's driving.
There we go.
Perfect.
All right. You know, I have to say that as each of these developments came before the Board of County Commission, at every point, I and the other commissioners asked, what are we going to do about schools? And how is this going to look at number 6, Berry Bay Farms? I mean, I raised the point. This is a 15-acre site that is being dedicated to the school district. And as Ms. Dickerson said, it takes 50 acres to build a high school. So, you know, there's nothing really that can be done with a 15-acre site in the middle. Look where number 6 is, in the middle of nowhere, outside, way outside our urban service area. This is not South County. This is WVR2. It's outside the urban service area. It's the rural area of South County. And so when this came before the board, several of us were, what are you thinking? How this is a bad idea to put whatever it was, 1,050 houses, I think, out in the middle of nowhere with no access to schools. And the 15-acre site, you can see, has no access, lack of roadway to the site. Unfortunately, by the time it gets there, and I'm saying this at the dais about why this is going to run into a buzzsaw, and we should rethink this. The land use attorneys for the developer are saying, no, the school district has already signed off on this. They're fine with this. They think this is good to go. So this is, when you talk about how we got here is not all on the county. There is there has been input from the school district saying, sure, put your development way the heck out here, and we'll sort out the school sites by letting the developer give us 15 acres and on a no access site. And I'll wrap up by asking for the proposed solution slide, short-term and long-term. I am deeply moved by the comments of Ms. Amato, who spoke to us this morning, telling us the names of the students who have died, the children who have died on our streets walking to school. I have seen videos that mothers have sent us that have played on the news, on television, of their children having to walk to school in areas of South County mostly, who where there's no sidewalks, no bike lanes, no shoulders, nothing but steep ditches filled with stagnant stormwater runoff and knee-high weeds. And their children are walking to school in those ditches because the roads are too narrow, there's no shoulders, and it's early morning and trucks and cars are whizzing by, because when you put, 1,000 houses a piece on each of these developments, you got a lot of traffic on these little rural country roads, and the school routes are unsafe. So, our county commission has committed to Vision Zero, to safe routes to schools within those that 2-mile radius that is not served any longer by the state's courtesy buses. And yet we're looking at a proposal for a short-term solution that is waive the requirements for safe streets in citing schools. That is a non-starter for me to say, here's the solution, just let us build schools without any and with an exemption and a waiver from the requirements that schools be cited on standard streets with standard safety features. For how long? How many schools? When does that end? How many schools would be put on on substandard roads, unsafe roads without the safe infrastructure? While we, I don't know, where does that lead? But I'm a no on that. I'll just tell you right now, and I'll stop there.
Thank you. And I don't, is there, I have a fair amount of comments, but I don't want to not recognize, yes, Commissioner Overman.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate Commissioner Smith's comments. And while I agree with all of them, I have some concerns about how we go about solving this problem. The Metropolitan Planning Organization is a planning organization. You are correct. It doesn't have the authority to actually, dictate what the county does and what the school does. But the whole point, in my opinion, is that, the Metropolitan Planning does the research to say, here's what we have to do, and brought forward largely in leadership the Vision Zero plan. And we have representation from the school board on the MPO. We have the data to show where populations want to go. We have the data that shows where we have populations with income and transportation disadvantaged circumstances at the MPO. And the MPO reviews the transportation the TIP in order to set the strategy on how the county decides to move forward in investing in its transportation. The difference that I see in how our process has operated is that we have not gotten clear indications of the school board's strategy for addressing where that growth is going, so that we can include it in the TIP to make sure that we have the transportation investment necessary to meet the goals of the communities that are being approved by the board through land use. Now, that doesn't mean that we had the money to do any of that, because historically we haven't really looked at it that way. But I do believe that if we did, it would be much easier to say, yeah, we need to raise impact fees, as Commissioner Kemp has done for years, and we finally got there where we did raise those fees. But if we don't see the handwriting on the wall through the planning of how we are going to address where our growth is going, which is what the MPO does, is give us that bird's eye view of what's possible, what's necessary, and where it's needed, oftentimes, and how we'll go about addressing complex transportation issues. I think it's critically important that the MPO, be part of the conversation, because they have the data to prove the points that are made at the various different authorities that move forward on either the implementation or the funding of those strategies. So while I agree that, there's no authority here for us to do those things, I think the advocacy that the MPO members have and the responsibility they have from their stakeholder position to bring that information forward effectively may have not been done in a productive way. And that's my concern, because while, the county has its list of projects and the things it's working on, in the order of which it does, it largely leads where our TIP goes. And if there's no connection with our TIP list and our growth list and our education needs, where schools need to be, the land use folks, which happen to be the same set of folks, who approve projects, are going to naturally assume that the school board is actually recognizing the needs of that community and is, when they approve the proportionate share agreement, they have addressed what's necessary to meet that goal. Maybe not so on the transportation side, because that's done by the BOCC in recommendation and support of the MPO's, policies and plans. But but that we have, there can't be an assumption here. I believe that there's an opportunity either through, as Ms. Dickerson has recommended, and we've heard in the past of a task force, but, the structure is here in some respects if we use it, or we're just creating another structure that is separate from all the data that's being gathered by the MPO to address our long-term transportation strategy and our growth strategies. So I'm concerned that if we, punt to a separate group, we may not necessarily take what the messaging that we've been effective of adopting for example, in the case of Vision Zero, and now we have legislators that are putting in bills to, do safe street funding and those kinds of things that isn't connected to our planning. So, it is in the sense that it's needed and we throw it out there, but then there's no funding behind it because it's not consistent with the long-term strategies of our long-term growth. And effectively what we end up with is nothing to work with on the short-term basis. So I don't know what the solution is, but I don't think it's not here to some extent. And we can choose to do it separately in another silo somewhere and not and find ourselves with multiple silos not working together, or we could use the tools we have through the MPO to help us get there. And I'll stop there.
Thank you. I know there's others that want to speak, but since I've been involved in this for a long time, I'm going to take a few minutes here to address this at this time. First off, I do find it curious to have it land here because I don't think this is appropriate jurisdiction. All the schools that were cited there are in the county. And it is the county that ultimately does that. And so the discussion here, I think, is not one that is, I find it inappropriate that it landed here, particularly looking at the discussion points that are there. If it was discussing how we need Vision Zero at all these places, that would be different than saying we should just drop Vision Zero for all these schools all over the county. I find that a little shocking. The other is that these roads that we're talking about are not on the tip because the tip has to do with state-funded FDOT roads. So they rarely end up on the tip or in any discussion with the MPO. And while the MPO, I think, has been incredible pushing forward Vision Zero and safe streets to school, safe schools, streets to schools, this recommendation is the opposite. So I find that a little bit surprising. I was also going to mention Ms. Amata. She's been a great advocate, as well as say, it just set my hair on edge. And we unanimously approved within the last couple of years that we would do a 2-mile safety zone around all our schools. You could cry when you saw the videos. And these are in the urban service area right now of kids who are trudging through a few feet. They have a few feet between a fence and a roadway. They're trudging through knee-high, deep grass and probably uneven ground underneath that. They're next to a street that has whizzing cars going 60 miles an hour within inches of them. It's amazing that we have not had more children. Parents who say that they take their kids to school, they live right across the street. They won't let their kids cross the street. There's no crosswalks. There's no nothing. They drive their kids to school across the street because they're too afraid of walking across the street to the school. This is all over the county. This isn't even just in the areas you showed. As well, I'd just like to draw attention. I was frankly a little disturbed. You talk about the acreage of these schools, but Waterset, it was a good place for a school. They just came up with 100 acres. We sent it on remand to ask the schools, would you please be interested in this piece of property? It was all the schools there are going over capacity. And, we just had a little no, we're not interested. And now, a charter school is interested, but our but our own school system, I'm not sure why. I would have liked to had a more detailed explanation of why that occurred. The other that I'd like to point out is we've already got Sumner High School, which is outside the urban service area, which opened 2 years ago. So I think it was probably approved before I was on the county commission. Basically, the first full year was 2017. But Sumner High School was put out there. Apparently, it is on a way substandard road. We had someone who was a school board member that was on this board that when it was about to open, just, came to a meeting and had a prolonged discussion, very upset about the fact that the Sumner High School was on substandard road. And what was said is that it would cost $5 million to make that road good. And I know some board members, because it wasn't a decision we could make, it was a county decision, came and said to me, can't we just get this done, this $5 million? So I went to the county administrator, this is existing now, and I said, how much would it cost to do this road? And the answer at the time was $8 million. But then we looked on the CIP, and actually it's going to cost $45 million. That I don't know when that will ever be done. It will be a decade out there to ever do the road that exists now outside the urban service area for Sumner High School. So I for me also, just like to say, and I worked very hard to get the impact fees, and it was 16 years, and those are the impact fees for schools. What we're talking here is about the impact fees for roads. We're still nowhere near where we should be. We're not. Always should have been, in my mind, at 100% at least of what it is now, and getting those transportation dollars. But even if we get those are for new impacts, not the past. We have such existing infrastructure deficits that within the county, and then we have places like Sumner High School within the urban service area. That's just outside the urban service area that I don't know when that can ever be done, much less other schools. So, I'd really, think that, again, I just think this is not the appropriate place for this discussion to have started or be done, because it just doesn't have the jurisdiction here. I know that we will be having a workshop at the county, I believe, so we can learn about exactly our roles in this and the specifics, and also working with the school board in the future on this. But I really think that we need, there's, for me as well, it's just a non-starter in terms of not sending kids to school in even worse conditions by just putting in schools at the places that are cited. One of the reasons I work so hard for impact fees is that they could be cited at better places, that there could be expenditures made for appropriate places for schools to exist. I'm going to I will get to you, Commissioner Cohen, but I'll let Ms. Alden speak at this time.
Sure, thank you. And I just wanted to clarify that you're right, that the MPO does not have a role with regard to the siting of schools. Those decisions are made in the unincorporated area between the county commission and the school district. We are continuously asked, can the MPO help address the transportation challenges around school sites? And as you know, we've done a deep dive study of the top 10 school areas that had crash issues earlier. So that is a role that the MPO can play. The MPO has had a school transportation working group in the past that has convened the transportation professionals from multiple agencies, and including in public education, to rally around how do we pull together the resources that we have to address these challenges. So today's workshop really is just informational the next speaker on the agenda is to talk about what is being done to address safety around schools. And then it's really up to us to carry this topic forward into our prioritization process for the Transportation Improvement Program. You're right that there are limitations on what federal dollars can be spent on, and they tend to be mostly allocated for the next 4 to 5 years. But if we don't start planning ahead now, then we'll be in the same position 5 years from now.
And with that, I'll recognize Commissioner Cohen.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be brief. I just want to reiterate and add my voice to those that believe it would be very inappropriate for us to abandon our commitment to safety around schools. We have worked very hard to get all of our member governments to sign on to Vision Zero. I believe that for the county, our number one transportation priority, number one, should be the safety of our students going to and from school, and that means within a 2-mile radius of schools, absolutely prioritizing the construction of sidewalks, safe streets, crosswalks, and anything else that is needed to make that travel as safe as possible. I'm not going to go into all the other issues. I know that we are all very anxiously awaiting this workshop between the board and the school board because there are a lot of issues, many of which have built up over 20 or 30 years that we need to sort out. But I do think it's important to just lay out that abandoning our safety standards at this time should not be something that is on our radar. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think with that, I see Commissioner Smith still has her hand up. Did you want
And
to?
if I could, yes, a quick point, a quick point of clarification. The schools, as I understand it, and this, I believe, has been litigated and decided, but the schools are not, as was kind of, we got the impression, legally prohibited from building improvements outside the area of their own property where they build the school. They are not prohibited. The state does not prohibit them from improving the roads anywhere in that 2-mile radius or beyond, or the sidewalks, or adding shoulders or bike lanes or anything. Nothing stops them. We cannot require them to spend their money that way, but they are not legally prohibited as long as, say, the road or the sidewalk begins at their property. They can improve it for a mile or two out past their property legally. And so I just wanted to make that clear that is part of the tools in the shared toolbox here. Thanks.
Thank you. And I will, just for a couple minutes, because we do have some other presentations as part of this from the county, but I'll recognize Ms. Dickerson, if she did want to be recognized.
Thank you. Yes, I did. Thank you. So that is a major pinch point legal issue that we need to discuss. So our attorneys have advised me per that decision that we were legally prohibited from building anything that's non-contiguous to our site. And that has been the biggest pinch point. And I think this meeting is the perfect example of why we need open conversations between the elected officials and both staffs, because there are pieces that are missing from these conversations. There are areas that we could shed some light on and that you all can shed some light on, and that I think is really important. So I just wanted to hit on a few points. By no means I'm saying that we do not support Vision Zero. We are a member of Vision Zero. We personally sat on the school safety team for the MPO in order to identify using data-driven measures where we needed improvements. Additionally, we've started our own internal circulation group to address some of these issues. So that is not what I'm saying, but you also have to look at our mission as well. Overcrowded schools are a safety issue as well. So if you have an overcrowded school and it's at 130, 140%, we will have to take measures to either, one, do double sessions or add significant buses to your roadway system in order to bus those students to where we have capacity. Also, I just wanted one point of clarification too. So Sumner High School is located within the urban service boundary. It is kind of on the edge, but I just wanted to make that clarification. And then also just another example of why we need to have the open dialogue between the governmental folks and the staffs is that actually Berry Bay was identified by your staff as one of the better sites. And so we've started negotiations for that conveyance. So that is exactly the perfect example of why we need to have these conversations on a regular basis so that we can say, here's all the data, here's all the information, how do we get past this? Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd also like to, I just was noticed that School Board Member Jessica Vaughn would like to speak, so you're recognized, Ms. Vaughn.
Thank you, Commissioner Kemp. I just had some questions. First of all, this is the first time I'm hearing about this task force, and I'd like to know what the process was where the district nominated Member Hahn for this, and why the new members weren't notified of that or a part of that discussion in any way, especially myself as being the representative on the school board for the MPO. And secondly, I'd like to know if I can have access to this PowerPoint aside from this meeting so I can further review these slides and how I'll be able to access that.
The PowerPoint is in the agenda packet.
Okay, so I can just pull it off there, no problem, no issues with that. Thank you. So if you could let me know more about the task force, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, well,
Madam Chair, this is Cameron Clark. May I speak when there's a moment?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Just to speak in support of something that Commissioner Smith stated earlier, there is some dispute between the county and the school district regarding a particular court opinion. I believe that what Commissioner Smith stated is absolutely correct, that there is a court opinion that states that the county cannot compel the school district to construct off-site improvements that are needed or necessitated by the school construction itself. There is a subsequent case that I think that creates some confusion there, but I believe the judge in that case was misreading perhaps the opinion in the earlier case. So I think Commissioner Smith stated it correctly. Another complicating factor in this matter is that unlike any other, say, large impact generating development such that say a mall or something that's very large like a school can be, public schools and also charter schools are statutorily exempt from paying impact fees. So when those facilities come in, there's no mobility fee that that facility generates to help mitigate its impact. So I just wanted to raise those two issues, especially since Commissioner Smith just spoke to that.
Thank you. And at this point, I think we've heard from everybody who wanted to hear on this, and I want to move on because we don't have much
Ms.
time.
Vaughn's question get answered?
I'm sorry. Thank you.
I could answer that.
Go ahead, Ms. Dickerson.
Thank you. So that appointment was actually conducted prior to the election. So that went to the school board regular meeting where Dr. Hahn was nominated.
Thank you. So I guess there might be opportunities to change that. At this point, we'll move to Josh Blvd of Hillsborough County Public Works, and he's going to talk about Hillsborough County school route safety improvements.
Good morning, everyone. Josh Blvd, Director of Engineering and Operations Department, part of Public Works Administration for Hillsborough County. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here to go through my brief presentation. Are you all able to see that?
Yes.
Yes, Josh, we can.
We can.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so the county's goal is to support safe routes to schools for all students, however they're traveling, whether they're walking, riding a bike, or riding in a bus or a car. With changes in the last few years related to courtesy busing, we've seen an increase in pedestrians and drivers, as well as safety and congestion concerns around student drop-off and pickup, and overall interest in enhancing school walking routes. The county's plans for the transportation surtax identified safe routes to schools as a major program initiative to implement Vision Zero principles around our schools. Top priority locations were identified using the data-driven screening and scoring from the MPO School Safety Study in 2018. These rankings considered factors such as crash data, walkability, demographics, things like the numbers of students on free and reduced lunch, transportation disadvantage. And the 10-year plan for surtax envisioned a need for 64 school walking area projects at an estimated cost of $135 million. So tremendous needs for safety investments at existing schools. In the meantime, while the surtax funding has remained uncertain, the county has moved ahead with establishing and piloting a process for developing these projects. And the first group of schools that was selected for this included Lato High School, Pierce Middle, and Alexander Elementary, located in the area just north of Hillsborough Avenue and west of Dale Mabry. These schools were ranked at the top in terms of priority. And speaking to some of the concerns raised earlier, these schools also serve a Hispanic population predominantly in the 70 to 80% range. So I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of our process and how our pilot went. The key element of the process was engagement with the community and partnering with the local school communities. The county, along with its transportation consultants, established an advisory committee consisting of representatives from each of the 3 schools, parent-teacher associations, sidewalk stompers, as well as our partners with the school district, sheriff's office, and Cutter. Several advisory committee meetings were held throughout the process, including one with each of the 3 schools individually to share initial findings from the analysis and receive input and recommendations, and one with all 3 schools combined to get consensus on the identified walking routes and recommended improvements. We had really good participation and engagement in the advisory committee, even with the challenges of COVID and holding the meetings virtually. And additionally, a community meeting was held at the end of the process to share the results and recommended improvements and solicit input and feedback from the community. The analysis itself included identifying the various walking routes within the area surrounding the 3 schools. GIS was used to identify the length of the routes, estimate the potential numbers of students, and desktop analysis determined which routes were common to more than one school. The team conducted field investigation to observe the routes and numbers of students using them, and analysis of the current and potential routes determined the demand, high, medium, or low, with the idea that the recommendation for enhancements would be prioritized for those highest demand primary walking routes in order to make the most impact. As I mentioned before, the results of these analyses were shared with the advisory committee, and together they came up with proposed safety improvements along the primary walking routes. The types of improvements recommended included new or improved pedestrian facilities, such as crosswalks, sidewalks, street lighting, speed management strategies, maintenance activities, including clearing vegetation, repairing sidewalks, making adjustments to traffic signal timing, adding signage, things like blank out signs at the signals, and potentially adding fencing in certain areas. The proposed walking route improvements were split into 3 categories. Short-term, low-cost improvements that could be implemented quickly and provide some enhancements within the first year. a midterm phase consisting of more moderate cost and complexity, and then a longer term phase of improvements that are more costly and complex and included things like acquiring additional right-of-way, utility and drainage work. Now, even though no surtax funding has yet been made available, our goal is to at least begin to implement some of the low-cost improvements to be able to start seeing some tangible results. So we have allocated $500,000 between the current CIP and operating budgets to proceed with the design and construction of the identified phase 1 enhancements for these schools. And then going forward, future long-term funding will be needed for the phase 2 and 3 work. So that was a brief overview of the process we use for developing those Safe Routes to School projects. We believe the pilot for these first 3 schools went well. We received positive feedback, and we're looking forward to continuing to move ahead with the next group of schools. So I'm here to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, I'm not sure if there's, we have about 15 minutes, and we have one more presentation with Beth. Maybe we could move on at this time, and Ms. Alden could do the wrap up here, and then take any questions or comments.
Thank you. I will make this brief. I'm trying to find my slides.
I think your mic isn't on.
Can you hear me?
It could be better.
Yes, we can.
We can hear you virtually well. It may be the room that's difficult to hear, so.
Okay. Okay. Work. All right. So we've been talking about available funding for transportation for many years. In the last update of the long-range transportation plan, we looked at some different options for revenue sources. I know that there are a lot of questions about the sales tax. Are we going to be able to move forward with that? Can we use the revenues that have already been collected? Are there other options if the sales tax does not come through? And so I just wanted to refresh some of the research that we did 2 years ago for the long-range transportation plan. So this is just a quick overview. These slides are also in your board packet. All the slides that you've seen today are in the agenda packet for this meeting, which is posted on the MPO website. So just real briefly, why have we been talking about additional funding for transportation in good repair? Only 60% of our roads are resurfaced on time. Funding for stormwater improvements to protect us from storm surge and the ever more frequent severe rainfall also needs to probably be doubled. In Vision Zero, we think that we can achieve a 15% reduction in our crash rates over the next 20 years with the funding that we have without the sales tax. With the sales tax, we think we could achieve a 35% reduction, obviously a much greater improvement. We could achieve much greater efficiency on our roadways by investing in smart technology and strategic addressing of bottlenecks at intersections. And this would greatly affect our travel time reliability, improving our delay reduction to 80%. And we could also greatly improve choices and access to bus service, access to jobs, access to critical resources like education and healthcare by expanding the bus network from frequent service or somewhat frequent service on 300 miles of roads to on 800 miles of roads with the sales tax funding. So this is all very, bread and butter stuff. Obviously, we've been talking about this for a long time. When we looked at the funding that was in the available in the long-range transportation plan, we were very comprehensive. We look at federal funding, at state funding, at local funding. And we coordinate with all of our planning partners to look at what those options are, and forecast out what those options could raise over the next 20 to 25 years. We also asked one of our consultants to look at what other communities are doing and see if there are things that other communities are taking advantage of that maybe we could use a little bit more here. The most obvious one that jumps out at us is we do have the ability as a county to levy an additional 5 cent per gallon gas tax, and most of our neighboring counties have done that. Ad valorem taxes, property taxes, an option for our local governments and also for HART. There are some other places that are looking at transportation network company fees, like fees on Uber and Lyft. The airport, for example, has a fee on drop-offs and pickups there. There are communities that are levying an additional property tax on parking. So that's what's referred to on this slide as an off-street parking fee. And that basically creates a disincentive to parking. It also raises some additional revenue that is directed towards transportation. And then some of the other options that are on here, a vehicle miles traveled fee is not enabled under Florida statute right now. So that's not an option now, but certainly something that we should be talking about with our legislative delegation. Some of them are very concerned as well with the decline in real value of the gas tax. Driver license fee is something that can be enacted by the county commission. Tolls only work on specific facilities, of course. Excuse me, not driver license fee, vehicle registration fee is something that can be enacted by the county commission and changed. So these were some options. There were some assumptions that went into these options. I'd be happy to talk with you more about this if you would like. But I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of the research that had been done earlier, and this is sort of an order of magnitude of revenue that could be raised over a 25-year time frame from these different types of unlevied funding sources. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you. If you want to, I'm just curious, can you move back to the screen that showed the amounts just now? It went by really fast, but I've never heard of several of these, and I'm glad you gave the clarification. I couldn't imagine that we could charge for or have a fee or tax for vehicle miles traveled. There is a driver's license fee. It looks very de minimis. Did you say there isn't that, or there is? I thought you maybe took that back.
There is the driver license fee is something that can be enacted by the county commission. It obviously isn't going to raise a huge amount of revenue.
Because that's 25 years of revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the vehicle registration fee.
So that one, I believe, is enacted by the legislature.
Mm-hmm. And are with, I'm sure Mr. Wagner would know more, but with regards to the tolls, that's for a local, you could do something like that for local use, other than for the roads themselves?
So tolls, we looked at specific facilities that could be tolled.
I see. Yes, Mr. Wagner.
What does the term unlevied mean?
Not in place.
No,
So
you would be, it's some assumed rate of increase over existing tolls?
So this would be tolls on other facilities that are not tolled right now.
Oh, okay.
Such as?
I have no idea how that was come up with. So.
Right, such as new express lanes on the interstate system, for example.
I was just trying to understand what that was. Okay. So we only have a few minutes left here. I don't want to not recognize others. I didn't see other hands up. Is there anyone else who would like to comment at this time? Seeing none, I guess we will, we're finished with our agenda here, but for old and new business. Is there any Yes.
I'd just like to ask everyone to please be in your seats at 10 o'clock. We have to have an abbreviated meeting today due to the schedules of some of the elected officials. So please, at 10 o'clock, be ready to start and go as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And the Bucks, we can say go Bucks, but they already went and did it. So.
Commissioner Kemp, I'd like to make a quick comment because I know I want to make sure everybody has a chance to take a break and then get back for the FDO meeting. Thank you. And as it relates to my comments earlier and the research we just got, I think it's helpful to include some planning and the research that the MPO does. And that was my point earlier. And where the MPO does have the capacity and the mandate of bringing to us planning and revenue management and coordination between our federal, state, and local dollars, it helps in looking at not only from the BOCC level, but also the school level when we're looking to coordinate funding for the challenges we are facing. So that's why I thought maybe having preliminary or having the MPO be part of the task force or part of the group, or make sure that when we have representation, for example, by the BOCC and the school board at MPO meetings that are talking about what we need, we address those concerns and then communicate those concerns and options to the various different legislative bodies that actually determine funding sources and things along those lines. So, and talking to our state legislators, when they'll either get in the way of home rule in terms of funding or advocate on behalf of efforts, for example, the 2 mile, distance around schools or the prohibition of using funds in those areas by the school district or other funding sources. So that's why I wanted to bring that up, and I'll stop there.
Thank you. Or for busing our kids 1 mile from school, I think would be really helpful instead of the 2 miles. But anyway, at this rate or at this time, we don't have any other new or old business, so I'm going to adjourn. And we'll be back here at 10 sharp.